In the Warhammer 40k universe, and with the grimness and darkness of it all, life seemingly sucks. Either having to work a pointless job till the nearest Tyranid fleet gets to you, or being shipped off to a battlefield where a horrifying fate will await you. Though if I told you somewhere out there, life doesn't suck that much, in comparison to all the other factions, with lobotomized zombie robots having a failing population, or just being too stupid, or living in the Imperium, there was some place out there that didn't have any problems at all. Well, my presentation today will be talking about the Tau Empire, and how life there is alright, and how technology is just technology.
What makes the Tau Empire so good in comparison to somewhere else, like, well, the Imperium? For starters, they use diplomatic approaches, meaning they prefer to talk it out with their enemies before anything else, before they escalate the conflict. Which doesn't seem that great until you realize the only other actual empire proper in Warhammer is the Imperium, which just prefers to blast their enemies to Kingdom Come before trying to have any sort of resolution. Comparison for the Tau Empire would be like the Confederacy from Star Trek. They prefer to integrate other alien species they find into their empire, so it's not just the Tau Empire. It's a conglomerate of other races that also contribute, like the Kroot, which basically acts like the melee warriors of the Tau. But, on another note, God, look at this guy. He looks like the inbred son of Godzilla. I mean, for gosh sake, he looks like he has a steady supply of glue and colored pencils he eats. I mean, he looks like he snorts Smarties. And the other notable race that works for the Tau is the Vespin, which are pretty much just flies. They're pretty cool in my opinion, but look at them. Not really much going for the lore anyways. But how did the Tau Empire even get its startings? Well, 6,000 years ago, in a backwater part of the Milky Way galaxy in the east, there was a backwater world with nothing more than caveman life on it. A world slated by the Imperium for execution, but a warp storm in the area picked up, basically blocking off the area for any species there. But the Tau Empire was able to survive. Now, the only reason why was because the Tau, in comparison to any other species in Warhammer, has a minuscule presence in the warp, meaning their world didn't even draw in any demons of the warp. But eventually, the Tau civilizations reached a point where they sectioned themselves off into different kingdoms. One being the Fire Nation, Water Nation, Air Nation, and Earth Nation. And since none of them had the leg up on each other, they were locked in an eternal war with each other. Until a mysterious new group came called the Ethereal Caste, where they went to every city in every nation and convinced everyone to stop fighting and join a caste system. In the name of the greater good, of course. So ultimately, they were divided into caste systems depending on what they could do. The air caste would be air pilots, fire caste would be warriors, water caste would be diplomats, earth caste would be scientists who would get all the heavy sci-fi lifting done, and of course the ethereal caste would be the leaders. Great job, guys. Make sure to put yourselves on top of a caste system no matter what. After this unification of the Tau, afterwards, they would just do straight building afterwards, advancing the society at a breakneck pace. But the warp storm wouldn't last forever that was protecting them, and soon enough, they subsided in the local area. Now, I want you to also take note of the fact that in 6,000 years, the Tau were able to go from cavemen to sci-fi. Now, even in human history, that's a lot. Because we went from, in 6,000 years, cavemen to ancient Egypt. They speed ran the entirety of human history and then some. But afterwards, the Imperium would start receiving reports from that area that a new xenospecies had been reaching out to Imperium worlds and offering them a stay in the Tau Empire. And after the Inquisition checked out the Tau worlds, they realized they were quite mortified to see how advanced they were, and immediately demanded a campaign against them. And so it went. And just like that, they sent an onslaught of Imperial Guards and Space Marines to one Tau world, and flooded it And like that, with a swiftness, that Tau was exterminated. But don't get this for weakness, though. After that, the Tau held their ground. Afterwards, any Imperial warships that would go too far from the fleet would get picked off by Tau ships, just having superior marksmanship and ranged weaponry. And also, any troops sent to a Tau world would get forced out or obliterated on drop. Didn't matter. Space Marines did not matter. Gone. After some more drawn-out battling, eventually the Imperium called it a failed campaign and just decided to leave the Tau Empire. Now, the Tau is still a blossoming empire, growing stronger by the day. And no matter what, they shall fight for what they believe in, the greater good, deciding that everyone should be a part of the greater good, even if it means taking a world or two by force. But ultimately, the Tau Empire does have its pros and cons, such as having a smaller population than the Imperium. That campaign, yeah, billions of soldiers died, and millions of Tau died. For the Imperium, it was nothing, but for the Tau, it was devastating losses. The Imperium could afford campaigns like that. They have 1 million worlds. While the Tau, they don't have 1 million worlds. They don't even have the manpower. If they have a devastating loss, they're cooked. The Imperium, not so much. Another con about the Tau Empire is that they're really close to the east side of the galaxy, which doesn't sound that bad until you see this image right here. Yeah, no, this is where most of the Tyranid fleets are happening. Each are the scouting troops as well. All these things you see on screen, all those are Tyranid monsters. Why did I choose to make this video? Well, it's simple. I really like Warhammer. Nothing much about it. Also, the Tau was just the most obvious faction to make the video on. And they're most peaceful. I mean, sure, they use bolters and what have you, but so is every faction in Warhammer. It's a war game. Even them, they have basically the most noble goals. They just want to unite the galaxy for peace. And also, it's just too much Space Marine stuff. Like, I like Space Marines as much as the next guy, but if I'm gonna be honest, it's just too much Space Marine stuff. They're coming out with a show. There's also just the lack of Xenos development in general. It's a bit of a problem, but I still like Warhammer. It's a fun hobby. Lots of fun lore.
Because it's Pikachu. Look at this shit, bro. You can't tell me this shit is not opium. Watch. Oh.